Hello, welcome back to my channel. Very quick reading update. I finished two books recently. The first one was something I mentioned in the last video, of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck. Yes, I do have two copies of this book. I mentioned it in the last second to the last video that I made. In which I talked about my experience buying duplicate books. But anyway, yeah. So I'm just gonna hold one. This would be my second book by John Steinbeck. The first one was The Pearl, although that was many years ago, and I'm not sure if I actually read the original version or actually the abridged version. Although I actually found out that the book itself, the original book, of The Pearl, is in fact quite short. So I'm just not sure if the version that I read as a secondary school student was actually the kind of like the simplified version of it. Anyway, I might read that later. But yeah, Of Mice and Men was quite nice. I kind of enjoyed it. This book was published, if I'm not mistaken, sometime in the late 1930s. And so the story kind of takes place sometime earlier than that. And it is set in California, and it revolves around two characters. One is named George, another named Lenny. So George and Lenny are good friends, and they are on their way to a farm owner's house to work there as a farmhand. And it is hinted that before that something has happened concerning Lenny in their previous employment, that they had to sort of escape. Now, that part is kind of like one of the intriguing points in this book, because the revelation of what happened around that time sort of become one of the things that introduced to us, like what kind of a person Lenny is. And we also learned that Lenny, he is described in this book as a simple-minded person. And based on what I read, he seems like a what we today would call a neurodivergent person. And he has this very simple outlook in life, where he is very much fixated on petting cute animals. And basically that's one of the things that he keeps on thinking about. And George, being a good friend for Lenny, sort of accommodates him. And George would tell Lenny stories about what they can do later once they're able to get enough money, save enough money. They would be able to buy a house and live there together. And then Lenny would be able to tend to rabbits all day long. And so we kind of learn about like how innocent of a person Lenny is. And I've not read much Steinbeck, but I kind of know that his books tend to be set in a grittier reality. And so when you have a character that is very much innocence embodied, such as Lenny, I think it is very easy for that sense of dread to appear. In fact, when I read this book, it that sense of dread just pretty much appeared right away when when I when I was introduced to the character of Lenny, and also at the same time we learn about what kind of jobs that they're doing. They were doing lower class, laborious kind of a job, and we learn about what kind of reality that they live in, the kind of economical situation that they find themselves in, and combining all of those elements together, that sense of dread pretty much surfaced for me, and I think that feeling of dread just stayed with me throughout this novel all the way until the end, where where something definitely happened. A resolution of the novel happened. I'm not going to spoil it, even though it is a classic. I'm sure a lot of people would have already read this book. But I think this book does a wonderful job at illustrating this clash of reality versus this kind of innocent naivety, like how these two different things just can't really mix together, and how a certain expected outcome would usually happen, So, yeah. One more thing. When I was reading this book, I felt that this book was filled with so much foreshadowing. And I can't help but imagine, like, this book must be a very popular book to be taught in schools, because teachers could teach about, among many things that can be taught from this book. So many things can be taught, but one of those things is that how foreshadowing is used, because it is everywhere. So yeah, that part was really obvious. It's almost hilarious for me, but overall I enjoyed this, and I've heard plenty of good things about the Steinbeck sort of works, so I'm definitely gonna give those a try. I'm interested in East of Eden because I actually have that book back home in East Malaysia, but if I have the opportunities to read his other works, I'll probably pick those up as well. Anyway, moving on to the second book that I finished. Now this one was not something that I particularly enjoy, and I was a bit disappointed because I had high hopes for this. This is a short story collection by Mariana Enriquez. This is called The Dangers of Smoking in Bed. So this book was originally written in Spanish. It was translated to English by Megan McDowell, and the collection was originally published in 2017, I think, in Spanish. So this short story, it is kind of like a not this short story. This collection, it consists of stories that are heavily based on the macabre. So things that are considered as revolting or disgusting, horrifying, horror elements are pretty much, they pretty much form the core of this book. Mariana Enriquez. She's an Argentinian author, and some of well, not some. Most of these books, most of the stories in this book, they take place in Argentina. But there are also some stories that take place outside Argentina, such as in Spain. And some of the common themes that run through these stories would be things such as women's experience, child abuse that can happen in society, mistreatment of children, basically. Sex is also one of the common things explored in this. You also have certain things that may happen in society, such as people being disappeared. That appears in at least one of the stories, and pretty much kind of like the use of magic in society as well. In certain parts of society, the use of magic in various areas. So basically, I would say that based on premise alone, I think that the short stories in here would have excited me a lot. And I would say, based on the themes alone, yes, definitely they do excite me. And all of these things are definitely things that interest me a lot. But unfortunately, I think that many of the stories in this book, they kind of rely too much on putting the macabre and the revolting front and center. Which honestly, those things, they are fine with me. They could be triggering to some readers, but I'm fine with them. But the problem that I had was that they were not horrifying enough. I didn't really feel like I wanted to squirm, or I didn't really feel disgusted enough. Like, I didn't have that visceral reaction from those elements. But, even so, it should be fine. But another issue is that many of the stories tend to end on a, like it's hanging. Like, the stories would just end abruptly, just like that. And I suppose that the effects that could have been produced from there is to kind of make it a little bit more open-ended, which is something that I appreciate as well. Make the readers guess more as to what could possibly happen. But for me, what I didn't really get was that there's this lack of emotional tension, the emotional core, because for many of the stories, focus a lot on the horror aspect, which didn't really produce much effect on me. And it didn't focus so much on establishing an emotional core, and so I wasn't feeling invested in the characters. I didn't really care about their struggles. And when the story ends, I still have not cared a lot about the characters, and so the ending always felt quite disappointing to me. So that's why I didn't particularly enjoy this short story collection. that being said, I do have some additional comments. There were some highlights in this book, some stories that I thought definitely stood out. So I just kind of want to focus on that right now. So let's see. I like the first story, Angelita Unearthed. So basically, this book is about the appearance of the main character's great aunt who died. But this great aunt, because she died as a baby, now she appears as a ghost baby. So the tone of this book was kind of ridiculous. It has that kind of almost hilarious, absurd tone to it, which I thought was an appropriate story to be made as the first story in this collection. And because of that story, I thought that it sort of sets a promising tone to the entire book. Although some of the subsequent stories, especially the second one, didn't really work for me. I also like a story called "Where Are You, Dear Heart?" So this book is about a heartbeat fetishist who finds that she is very much aroused by people's heartbeat. Okay, so I'm not going to say much about that, but I like the concept of that. I like the in general, I kind of like stories that explores fetishes and kinks, because if written well, these stories would usually open up like so much narrative potential in terms of the characters' psyche, like why they have this fetish, like how it develops, how it expands, how all of those things are really interesting when made into stories. So this was one of the nicer ones. I also kind of like kids who come back. So this one is, I would say it's probably the longest story in this book, and it revolves around the issue of missing children in Buenos Aires. And it kind of goes into this almost magical realism territory, very much fantastical, with some strong dose of unhinged and uncanny as well. Basically, this book is about missing children who inexplicably returns a few years after they've been missing, and basically that's what the story is about. And I thought that it provides a nice enough of a commentary on this particular issue that takes place in the city, and it does so through a different perspective, through a more supernatural perspective, and I kind of like that. So those were some of the stories that I enjoyed, but other stories, they were not so much for me. That being said, I'm still interested in reading more by Mariana Enriquez, because I actually have another of her book. It's called Our Share of Night, I think, and it's a long novel that I got like a few months ago. Other things that I also noticed about this book, they got me thinking, is that much of the stories here, right, they concern about women's experience, especially women who are who live adjacent to this whole witchy experience. I don't know if that makes sense, but women and witchy women and magic and all of that, and women's madness, hysterics, those labels kind of stuff. Those things, those elements kind of exist in my part of the world as well. And so when I was reading this book, I was able to kind of see those aspects through my own eyes that were colored by my own world. And I could see that there were a lot of parallels with that. And but the difference is that I'm not sure if I see a lot of writers here. There are some writers who write about those things, but I just don't see many works that are, as I would say, out there. The way works like this do, right? When it comes to when it comes to these kinds of topics. So yeah, that was just a random thought that I had. I was able to kind of, well, I wouldn't say relate, but I was able to resonate with the themes of this book, which is I'd say which is a great thing. So that is why, even though I didn't really enjoy this book, I'm still am interested in reading more stuff by Mariana Enriquez. Anyway, those are the books that I finished. Just very quickly, currently I'm reading this book. This is by Philippe Besson. This is called Lie With Me, translated from French to English by Molly Ringwald. It's a gay novel. I think that's all I'm gonna say about this, because I don't really want to read the description. It's a really short book, so I'm just gonna read the book, go into it blind without the description. So yeah, let me know if you have read any of these books, and these books, and if you like them, if you hate them, if you're indifferent about them. But yeah, that's all I have for this video tonight. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you again in a different video. Bye bye.